Welcome to the Why Did I Get Cancer podcast. I'm Deborah Herlax-Enos, a small-town girl turned TV nutritionist and healthy living expert. I design health programs for the average guy or gal, including those average guys named Metallica. On September 1st, 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I asked every oncologist the same question, why did I get cancer? But none of my doctors had good answers for me. I wanted answers, and that's why I started this podcast. I want to help you to lower your cancer risk and provide self-care tips for those in the battle. I'm getting answers, and I want to share them with you. I always like to just look back and see what I've learned. I try to do that every month, and I certainly do it on a quarterly basis. And what I'm hoping to achieve with this podcast today is really give you my top takeaways from the first part of 2024. And there were many outstanding podcast guests that I had on the show, but there were a few takeaways that I've really thought about and have really taken some time to process. So we're going to be listening to some clips from Dr. Josh Axe, who is really a world-renowned naturopath and leadership author and speaker. And we talked so much about mindset. He had a debilitating medical accident where he couldn't walk for a year. And he wrote a book during that time period, which is amazing. The book is titled Think This, Not That. And he learned a lot of lessons along the way, and they are gold. So I pulled out my top 4 lessons from that podcast. The second podcast I wanted to talk about was from the people from the Radical Remission Project. And that's Dr. Kelly A. Turner. This is the third time that I've had somebody from that project on the podcast. And there are 10 healing factors that seem to be consistent when somebody goes into a radical remission and they no longer are testing positive for certain diseases, specifically cancer. We had a great conversation about what does it look like if you're too good of a patient. There's a lot to unpack there. But we also talked a lot about laughter. And I think y'all know, if you've been listening long enough, I try to laugh a lot every day. I try to get my numbers, because there was a study years ago that found little kids under the age of, I think, 12, they laugh 300 times a day, but adults laugh 8 to 12 times a day. So I want to be more like a little kid, even if I might be a little obnoxious sometimes. So sorry for that in advance. And then the third podcast guest is Chris Carr, who I just feel like we'd be such good friends if we lived in the same town. She is an Oprah Soul guest, and we had so much to talk about her journey. She's a 21-year cancer survivor, thriver. She has got 24 tumors inoperable inside of her, and she has learned to love her body, including those tumors. I got to tell you, that is no easy task. I had a hard time loving my body when my breast was removed. So you know what, honestly, God bless her. I don't know how she does it, but you will learn more about her journey when you hear these clips. So I hope you enjoy them. I've always had such a fascination with emotions and chronic disease. So specifically what I mean by that is, if you're a, highly stressed person, is there a certain body part or an organ that is, that will take the brunt of that stress? And this is one of the conversations I had with Dr. Axe is, so if you're driven by fear or anxiety or a lack of forgiveness, are there certain areas of the body that might be more impacted? And he said, absolutely. And one of the things that he said that I really took to heart is that unforgiveness is one of the worst emotions if you are trying to avoid cancer. And I've said this before on my podcast, is I know that is one of the issues I really struggled with in my life. Was somebody would hurt me, or I'd get involved in some sort of a situation, and I would struggle with forgiveness. So I hope you enjoy this clip. I hope you find it inspiring. It really gave me a lot to think about.
Frustration, resentment, bitterness, or unforgiveness, that really affects the liver and your body's ability to detoxify. And the other one is the immune system, and that's your lungs and your colon. 90% of your bacteria and your microbiome live in your colon, the lower part of your digestive tract there. And so that is really tied to if you've had something happen in the past and it
Mhm.
still bothers you today. So I mean, it could be
Mm.
emotional trauma, it could be physical abuse, sexual abuse, anything that's happened in the past, and you're living
Wow.
with the shame or regret or something like
Mm.
that, and you haven't been able to let go and move on, that
Mhm.
shuts down and weakens your immune system. And by the way, this is why unforgiveness is probably the most toxic of all the emotions in terms
Wow.
of cancer. It's the hardest
Okay.
on cancer because unforgiveness is you are resentful about something that's happened in the past. The resentment's affecting the liver, your
Mhm.
detoxification, the thing happening in the past is affecting your whole immune system. And those are the two primary systems that are responsible for killing off cancer cells and keeping you from having those. And so, and the last one here is anxiety. We know that
Mhm.
can raise your blood pressure. That affects the cardiovascular system and the nervous system.
Right.
Anxiety the most, and so, but and there are fields now like German New Medicine touches on a little bit of this, but really Chinese medicine has been talking about this for thousands of years, and
For
so
thousands of years.
yeah,
Right.
and so,
Right.
but this is why it is so critical if somebody wants to live a long time, stay healthy, reverse cancer, any of those things, that they take care of their mental health and their
Mm.
emotions and their mindset, because I actually think it's a bigger cause of cancer than diet and lifestyle, or at least
Wow.
equal to.
Let me repeat that. So, our mindset, forgiveness, lack of forgiveness, all of those things can be as important as diet.
Hmm. Yeah.
This second clip with Dr. Axe is actually from part two of our series, and it's episode 68. And he was talking about this accident that he had, a medical accident, and he couldn't walk for a year. And he woke up one day and he realized how poor his attitude had been, and he knew his attitude wasn't serving him to get well. This clip is about neuroplasticity, which is basically the power of thinking positive thoughts. And that actually can create changes in your brain. It can send out stem cells to areas that need to be healed. Anytime I'm thinking about having a bad attitude, I honestly think about Dr. Axe's journey and how he was able to change his attitude and his outlook. And it really, in his opinion, really felt like it created a path to healing for him.
I was throwing my 2-year-old, 3-year-old daughter in the air, and and I can't do that now. So I had about 24 hours where I really just felt terrible. And the next morning I woke up and I just prayed and I thought, you know what? This isn't serving me having this mindset. And I know
Mhm,
the reality of something called neuroplasticity, and that is your belief really matters. If you
mhm.
believe you will heal, your brain will actually start creating new neural pathways, creating new nerve tissue, sending uh, new stem cells and growth factors to actually heal and repair the area. So I read a study on visualization with this. So I would visualize that area of my spine healing. I would
Oh,
visualizing all the nutrients being sent there. I would then well up with emotion, thinking about, because you're supposed to do this, what my ideal future would look like. So me throwing my, baby girl up in the air again,
oh,
playing with her,
yeah.
doing those things, and then I just put the strategy in place. But if you're in a position where you don't feel well and you're sick,
Mhm.
you need to go through this process of visualizing what does your ideal future look like,
That is so
connecting
good.
it to your emotion, and then
Mm.
creating the plan to get there. And I really think that'll help people experience a breakthrough.
This is my second clip from episode 68 with Dr. Josh Axe. And on the surface, it might seem like we are not talking about health matters, which, of course, that's what I'm here for, and that's what he's here for. But we're talking about the people that you surround yourself with. And I've always believed that your inner circle really will show you exactly who you're going to end up being someday. So when I thought about it, isn't that also part of our health circle as well? So if I surround myself with people who are going for hikes or going swimming or volunteering, that behavior can be contagious. And so I am going to be bold enough to say that I think that your five inner people, your five inner circle people can also not only change your life from a success point standpoint, but also change your life from a health standpoint. So listen to the clip. Let me know what you think.
I've had probably 2 to 3 times in my life where I realized I need a different inner circle. I need iron sharpens iron. I want to grow. I
Yep.
want to live my best life possible. I want to do things that matter. And I had to step away from sometimes even good relationships into great. And so I would also say, be really conscious about your inner circle. I mean, this is something I touch on in chapter 6 of the book, is how to cultivate this community of iron sharpens iron, of encouragement, of growth. And
Mhm.
it's so important. And so I really try and think about, yeah, who are 5 people that I'm spending the most time with? They say you become like those you spend the most
So
time with.
true.
And
Yeah.
so really thinking about who are those people you need to start moving out of your life, and who are those people you need to start pursuing and creating a community with, that are going to help you in that way, and you're going to help them in that way. And so that's another thing I think that's so important, is that and I think some people lost that over COVID. I think that
Mhm.
it really sort of created a lot of separation, COVID did, from people. And I think right now, I think people are realizing, well, we need to get back together, we need to build community in order to live the best life possible.
In this final clip with Dr. Josh Axe, we talk about emotional intelligence, which again might seem like, why are we talking about this on like a health and cancer prevention podcast? But he was saying that there is some new research emerging, and what it's saying is that EQ, which is your emotional intelligence, basically like self-awareness and awareness of your attitude and being grateful, is more important than IQ. So I'll say that again. Your EQ, emotional intelligence, is more important than IQ when it comes to success in all areas of your life. So again, being self-aware, seeing people, working hard to understand them, looking deep and understanding yourself and processing emotions that really don't need to be there, like the unforgiveness that we had talked about earlier on this podcast. I think this is going to really give you some very interesting food for thought. Enjoy.
If we can have the perspective and go through them with gratitude and praise, knowing that
Right.
this thing will be used for our good, because that's a choice. You can
It
either
is.
waste it and go through it grumpily and be a victim and make everyone else around you miserable, or you can go through. My parents said this to me several times. I had a lot of people say this. They said, I really was blown away by how positive and faith driven you were through that
Yeah.
situation. And I was thoughtful about that, because here's the other thing. Like, I thought about myself as I was going through it a little bit, but in terms of like, I need this for myself to heal. But
Hmm.
I also thought about, I have a 2 and she was turning 3-year old daughter watching me go through this. And I thought, well, at some point in her life, it's inevitable. She's going to go through something hard. Could be
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
And she's going to learn how to deal with hard things, by watching me. So I think I was aware of that too. And I think I'm just, and I think this level of, you mentioned this actually at the very beginning of our interview, but self-awareness is a really important key to healing and being healthy, and all you can be. When you look at the people that are the most self-aware, it tends to
Hmm.
be people that are more of, like, I think about like spiritual mystics. It could be or just people that are very spiritually driven. I think about, could be uh, a pastor, could be a monk, could be a
Hmm.
rabbi, could be a priest. I don't know. They tend to have this sort of serene calmness about them, right? And a very level of
Right.
self-awareness and other awareness and what's going on in the world. And so I think that but I was very aware of my emotions, what was creeping up, what was going on, the way that I acted and responded to something, how that impacts others.
Hmm.
And that's another thing that's actually in chapter 3 in the book, because I learned all the things, a lot of that I learned through this. I really went through that self-awareness piece, and that's a form of emotional intelligence. And actually, for success, there's studies that show, loads of them, that emotional intelligence, known as your EQ, is more important than your IQ if you're going to have
Oh,
good relationships, successful at work, health breakthroughs, any of those. That self-awareness and emotional intelligence is more important than your actual,
interesting.
knowledge, IQ, intelligence.
Which seems so contrary, but, when you dig down deep, of course that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you experienced this, but I got really mad at God for
Yeah.
about 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'd lived this lifestyle. I've been a certified nutritionist. I've got a degree in health science and exercise physiology. I've done all the things. And I got really mad for 3 days and wouldn't talk to him. I thought I was really, like showing him. And I'm a woman of great faith, but those 3 days were the hardest of the entire cancer season. And then when I found out I had to have a mastectomy, I was talking to one of my friends, Deanne, and she's part of my spiritual advisor team. There's a group of 5 of us women. We meet every Wednesday from 12 to 1. We talk about what's going on in our lives. We pray for each other. We text each other. I even texted them this morning. I said, I'm talking to Dr. Axe. I want your prayers, no
Oh, that's
technical
great.
difficulties, all of those things. Bless this conversation. And I said to her, Deanne, I'm a good person. I donate my time and I
Mm,
tithe. I do all
yeah.
these things. Why is this happening? And she said, it sounds like you have a transactional relationship with God. And I went,
Mm,
oh, you're right. So my thoughts were, if I do good, everything's going to be good.
mhm.
He's just going to bless me. And yes, I'm getting blessed, but I'm getting blessed in a way, in his way, not my way. And so now I have this amazing podcast he's blessed me with, and it's my ministry, it's my passion project. Did you ever go through anything like that where you just kind of were mad at God for this happening?
Yeah, and again, I was aware of this, that I was actually mad at a lot of people. I
Mm,
think I was mad at God for not protecting me. Now, I don't believe that God did this,
right.
cause it, but obviously I think that he has the power to keep things from happening.
Mhm.
Um, I had to forgive myself because I'm like, why did I go in the first place? I was fine. I didn't
Mm,
really have to have that done. I had to forgive the doctor who did the
yeah.
procedure,
Yeah.
so yeah, I had to forgive a lot of people, including God, including myself. Yeah, it was, and I do feel like after a few days, I was able to really work through that and pray through that and say, God, forgive me for not forgiving you,
Right.
but yeah, that definitely, yeah, that definitely happened. One of the other things too, it causes me to also, like, I think my perspective has been, though, as well, is that our time here on Earth is like a speck of sand on an endless timeline. And if
Mhm.
I think about that and think about, okay, God, how could this be used for good? That's the thing I would just really try and think
Yep.
through. How can this be used for good? And we know that there's treasures in heaven. We know that there's eternity. We know that there's life beyond this that's going
Mhm.
to go on way, way, way longer than this. And so knowing that, I think, is helpful. And also knowing I can't flourish without him.
Flash sale alert. It's also Father's Day coming up really soon. And I have to tell you, my dad would have loved this flash sale from Butcher Box. He loved him some red meat. Plus, we were farmers, so we had a ready supply of red meat in the freezer. But this is an amazing deal from Butcher Box, and I know that they're not offering it to anybody else. So for Father's Day, $60 off of your first box, and then free either fillets, ribeyes, or strip steaks in your box. That is an amazing deal, $60 off. Now, this is a very short window. It's available May 31st through June 8th. And that is it. This deal goes away. All the information is in the show notes. You can also go to butcherbox.com/Enos and then put in Enos, E-N-O-S, all lowercase, to get this screaming deal. I am buying this for my husband. We love a good ribeye. And I have to tell you, the Butcher Box ribeyes are amazing. Grass-fed. Gotta love it. Enjoy, and happy Father's Day. I have been doing this podcast for 3 years, and this is my third time talking to the people from the Radical Remission Project, which is Dr. Kelly A. Turner, and she talks about the 10 healing factors that people do that can send them into being radically healed, a radical remission. Some of these things are physical. You would think, yeah, move more, meditate, eat a better diet, maybe take some supplements. But this clip we're about to play for you, it's about laughter. And I'm a big believer in laughing. And I remember reading this book when I was getting my health degree about the power of laughter and how patients who laughed more each day had more natural killer cell activity in their body, which can help to, kill tumors and other cells that have gone rogue. So listen to this clip. It's all about the power of laughter while people are getting chemo. Thinking happy thoughts and being grateful, that actually turns on
Mhm.
your natural killer cells that can kill cells that have gone rogue that are
Absolutely. Yep.
becoming
There's a
cancer.
lot of research actually. Some of the interesting research we share in the books and in the workshops that we do about people who have so there's a study, for example, one group, the control group does their thing and the other group is shown comedy during chemotherapy sessions. And what they find in the blood work is, you can't even compare the two. It's more effective, they have less side effects over a long term, and it's even after 4 hours after their chemotherapy session. So, it's
Oh
pretty
my
remarkable.
gosh, that's
Mhm.
incredible research. So,
Yeah.
because the people who were getting chemo, they were watching a comedy show at the time,
Mhm.
and so
Yep.
the chemo was more effective
Because they were feeling
because
laughter and joy and just ease,
oh my
as opposed to maybe
goodness.
somebody who brought their laptop from work and they're doing their job, or they're just so nervous about the infusion, or, who knows, but they were not distracted. They did whatever they wanted to do, and this other group was given funny videos to watch. So,
Oh my gosh, that is
it's a lot
that is
for
amazing.
that value.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
that's
that
the kind of research you'll find in that book, the Radical Remission and Radical Hope books.
mhm.
It's all research about things that are very relatable, and, I mean, the intuition research is phenomenal. There's so many really cool things that, if you don't take the time to know about it, you don't realize
Mhm.
the value.
So this second clip from my Radical Remission episode with Liz Curran is actually discussing her sister. Her sister died of breast cancer, and it was a fairly aggressive form of breast cancer. And it was really heartbreaking because Liz was telling me that her sister was one of those, what they call a good patient. She was very obedient. And when she tried to ask questions, her medical team would shut her down. And this is really near and dear to my heart. And quite honestly, this makes me really angry because you no longer are working with your medical team. If they're not listening to you and they are not helping to answer some of your questions, that's not the right team for you. And if you don't have confidence in your medical team, I am just going to go out there and say it. I think it's going to be really hard to get well because at that point, for me, speaking for myself, I would lose hope. So this clip is, boy, it's a tough one to listen to, but I think anybody who is going through anything medical, really give it a listen and give it some thought when you're thinking about putting your medical team together.
She was diagnosed and passed within a year.
Oh,
And so it was a fairly quick cancer journey, all from start to finish. And one thing that was very much in her personality was she was the good patient. We call them in Radical Remission the kind of
mm,
obedient, do whatever they say and
mhm.
don't ask questions kind of thing. I was in appointments where she would try to ask some questions, and they would say, "Oh no, we're not going to talk about that yet. Let's wait till further down before we know." And at the time, I was like, "Okay, well, that's what the doctor says. Let's
Uh,
do that." And she was very compliant, is a good word.
yeah.
But what I did see it do was it took hope away from her, because if you tell
Mm.
her the answer to her question about what she's thinking may happen in 6 months, then she can hold on to that. And even if it changes, it's not set in stone, things can change. But, she didn't have anything to hold on to. So it
Wow.
really restricted her perspective on getting second opinions and kind of looking into supplementation or different opportunities that she had, because they were not quote allowed. So when I learned about that being healing factor, I was like, yes, this is so important. People really need to feel like they have questions that need to be answered and they deserve to be answered.
I really enjoyed my conversation with Chris Carr. She's one of Oprah's Super Soul guests, and I'd seen her years ago on Oprah, and she has been living with stage 4 incurable cancer for 21 years. She had her recent 21-year anniversary. And we had such an interesting conversation about making peace with your body when you feel like your body has let you down. And she was telling me how she loves every part of her body, including those 24 tumors that are inside of her. And one of the interesting takeaways for me from this, from talking to Chris Carr, she said, you can't amputate any part of your body or your emotions and expect to survive. And that is so true. And then when we were talking about, sometimes you get caught up in the why of why things happen. She said, what if you said what? What can be done? What can I do with this new information? Give the clip a listen. I think it's really going to inspire you.
The big question that I reframe around any rupture, any big shit pickle that happens in our lives, and there will be many of them, for many of us, it includes cancer, is not to get too caught up in the why, because sometimes we can never answer that question. To your point, you did everything, quote unquote, right. Right. And so it can be so frustrating. And for a lot of people, I think we can get stuck in that why. I certainly was stuck in the why for quite some time. And then, so instead of being in that why, because again, we don't know, we have no idea why cancer, right? We just know a lot of people get diagnosed. And so I think a better question to ask is what? So what can I do now that I have this information? What can I do to support my body? What can I do to support my mental well-being? What can I do to support my spirit, my joy? What can I do now? And that's really the approach that I've taken. Making peace with my body is about loving and caring for all parts of me, even the parts of me that are struggling. So, the 24 tumors in my body, those are not things that I have hatred towards. Those are not, I can't get rid of them. I can't cut them out and go on with my life. They have they are a part of me, whether I like it or not. There's other things that I don't like about my body or myself or my personality. And whether, if I put those things in a negative basket, I'm going to start to like me less and less and less. And I think this journey of being alive and being lucky enough to be alive is learning how to enjoy your own company. I enjoy my own company partly because I've chosen not to hate myself and hate parts of myself or be frustrated or amputate the parts of myself that are struggling. Because last thing I'll say is we can't amputate any of ourselves or any of our emotions and expect to be whole.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. There is nothing that makes me happier than learning new things. Well, actually, there's a lot of things that make me happy, but I do love learning new things. I love crawling into bed at night and thinking about what I learned. And I learned so much from these 3 guests. So if you'd like to listen to the entire episodes of each one, I'm going to be tagging everything in the show notes, and hope you have a great day. Do you struggle getting organ meat into your diet? Probably not, because none of us are really doing it. But can I tell you that organ meat is like taking a multivitamin? It is such a superfood. It is so rich in nutrients. It is, honestly, it's almost unbelievable. So I will admit I have to kind of force myself into this area. But I want to tell you about a product that makes the force a lot easier. It's a product called Pluck Seasoning. Chef James Berry created this product. He was a podcast guest a couple of weeks ago. So go back and listen to that podcast if you get a chance. He talks all about the importance of grass-fed organs, and he made a seasoning salt to make it super easy to get that superfood, again, the organ meats into your diet, and it tastes amazing. I am telling you, the first time I used it, I thought it was Lowry's seasoned salt, and I think it's incredible, and it's a way to elevate a regular food and turn it into something that's a little bit more nutrient dense. And again, I struggle with getting organ meat into my diet, and I know the value of organ meat. So in the show notes, the link was too long for me to repeat it, but in the show notes, there is a link. Click that and then use the code DEB20 and you will get 20% off of your first order. And I have to tell you, he also doesn't give a 20% discount to just anybody. If you research this product, I think the most discount you can get, the biggest discount is 15%. So he has been so generous to me to provide a 20% discount. So again, go to the link in the show notes at Plex Seasoning, use the code DEB20, get 20% off. And it's a great way to kind of tiptoe into adding more organs to your diet. Enjoy. Hey, y'all, can you do me a favor today and go and leave a review of this podcast? I know that the more great reviews, wink, wink, emphasis on great, reviews that I get, along with more downloads and more subscribers, that pushes this podcast out to people who might normally not even find it. And the reason I started this podcast and my real heart for starting this podcast is that I needed this information. It wasn't available. And so I started a podcast so that I could be a blessing to others. So you're a blessing to me just by being here. And again, thank you for your support. Thank you for your positive reviews and all of the notes that you send me. And also just wanted to say, hey, keep in mind, I'm not a doctor. And if you need medical advice, please reach out to your team. That is going to be just the best source for you because they know you. So again, I hope you enjoyed this podcast.